Citroen is not a mainstream automotive brand in India. The C5 Aircross, for what it is fairly overpriced, and that's why you don't see those many on the road. And the brand also suffers because of the limited network that it has. But Citroen wants to be a mainstream manufacturer, and that's why it introduced the C3, is the car that you see behind me. Hello and welcome to Pitstop. This one is aimed squarely at the Nissan Magnite, the Renault Kiger, the Tata Punch, those lot. Is it any good to really take the battle to those cars? That's what we're trying to answer in this drive report. Check this out. If you're someone who has a good sense of aesthetic, you will realize that the C3 looks like a shrunken C5, and that's not a bad thing at all because C5 itself is a pretty handsome looking car and it has all the quirkiness going on in terms of design. And the C3 also reflects that, and in this segment, it's just that extra special because it stands out in a crowd. The front has nice curves going on and it's dominated by the twin chevron logo, the logo of Citroen that is. It has a split headlamp and it really suits this car. It's not something that feels out of place at all. The rear does not really have a lot of elements going on and it's not as interesting as the front end is, but it's still got a sense of uniqueness to it. Now the one that we are driving is grey and orange, and yeah, that splash of color just adds more flavor to it, more personality to it, and you can really feel the youthfulness in this car as well. The C3 is just under 4 meters in length and it gets all the tax benefits because of that. This thing is priced fairly competitively from about say 6 lakh rupees all the way up to 8.5. So yes, the target is onto the Nissan Magnite, the Renault Kiger and the Tata Punch. But while those things offer a few extra features, this thing misses out on some of the most basic ones. Like for example, you don't even have a camera for reversing. This one has sensors, yes, but cameras in today's day and age are an absolute must, no matter what the size of your car. So yeah, I think Citroen has definitely cut corners in some places and some features would have been very welcome. And as is the norm now, you get a touchscreen infotainment system right in the middle. It's a fairly decent unit. The display looks very nice, but there are issues with it, and yes, you have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but the moment you get into settings and you then have to pair your phone, this thing has not been able to turn on the Bluetooth of the system. The discoverability of the Bluetooth is off. And we've really tried everything. We have turned off the car, we've restarted the system, we have put it on to factory reset, nothing has worked. So there is definitely some flaw in this. A few things don't make sense ergonomically. One of the things is the position or the placement of the switches for the rear windows. It's right here behind the handbrake lever, and it's not the most comfortable neither for the front passengers nor for the rear ones, and just accessing it is going to be a little bit of a tedious affair. The second bit that I absolutely hate in this car, and genuinely hate, it's not a dislike, it's a hate, is the design of the gear lever. The top part just seems so weird and it almost feels like you're holding something massive and ungainly, and it does not feel like a gear stick at all in your hands. And yeah, I don't think you can work this gear lever in a very swift way. It's not something that comes to you naturally. It is just one of the most bizarre designs that I've seen in any car so far. And because of this weird design of the gear knob, working the gearbox swiftly is also an issue. You can't really go very rapidly through the cogs, and going actually from 4th to 5th, it also kind of just gets hindered in the middle. It just does not feel very natural, and that's one of the very, very big issues that I have with this car. And it's a shame really because the gearbox itself is pretty alright, fairly slick, and you go through the cogs very nicely. Anyway, now for the way this thing drives. And it drives pretty well. Now what we are driving is the 1.2 litre 82 horsepower version. This thing makes about 115 Newton-metre of torque. There is another one, it's also a 1.2 litre, but that makes about 110 bhp and crucially 190 Newton-metre of torque. And that would definitely heighten the sense of enjoyment a bit more, because this thing can genuinely track a good arc around some bends. Now that 110 bhp and 190 Newton-metre comes from a turbocharged engine. This one is non-turbo, it's a naturally aspirated. But even in this one, you don't really feel that it's lacking in power as such for this car and for the kind of application that this car is going to be subjected to. This level of power feels pretty alright, and the mid-range has really impressed me a lot. Even in fact at very low RPMs, this thing has managed to pull through, and that's where the flexibility of the gearbox comes into its own. Yes, that 110 bhp, 190 Newton-metre, it just makes for good reading, and some part of the sales is also going to come from that. But this one is the main seller. This engine is going to be the main seller, and with both the engines, there is no automatic right now. It's only manual gearboxes. With this one, you get a 5-speed gearbox, and the 110 bhp version, you get a 6-speed gearbox. Seats, they're just about okay. The comfort factor is still pretty alright, but they feel like they're a bit too small, and they only just hold you in place. The back is narrow, the top part is narrow, the seat base just enough. And I would have really liked the seats to be a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more space in them would have been very welcome. Seats in the back, again the same thing, generally okay, but them being a little big would not have gone amiss at all. But the space is pretty alright. Two tall people, one behind the other, yes, definitely because of the footprint of the car, a little tight, but otherwise it's not a bad place in terms of space or comfort. The C3 shines in a couple of very crucial aspects, and those two are ride and handling. Yes, people are going to, of course, compare it against the Renault Kiger, Nissan Magnite, Tata Punch. Tata Punch is actually the right benchmark for this, because even that car really plays along very nicely. The balance of the chassis is spot on, and this is where the C3 comes into its elements. This is where it starts to shine. The suspension is absolutely phenomenal. You do feel a little bit of roll because it's a high-riding crossover sort of a car. Yes, thankfully, Citroen does not make bones about this being an SUV, while every manufacturer is chasing that term, and that's exactly what brand talk really should be like from manufacturers. So this high-riding hatchback behaves exactly how the concept of high-riding hatchback should behave, which is a bit of a roll when you tip it into corners, but at the same time there is enough communication with the road to tell you what exactly is going on. And Citroen has made claims of magic carpet ride quality with the C5, but even in the C3, the ride quality is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, I would go to the extent to say that this is much better than the Punch, and the Punch is very good on its suspension as it is. So this thing, yes, may not probably be as well a handling car as the Punch is, but in terms of annihilating things on the road, in terms of bumps or any scratchy surfaces, this is a far more accomplished product compared to the Tata. That sense of funkiness continues on the inside as well. You get this special dashboard that Citroen has done. It's got a dimpled sort of an effect on the passenger side, and it's all done in orange in this car because this is one of the higher trims. And yeah, I think this is going to be a topic of conversation between friends for sure. Otherwise as well, this cabin is pretty high on practicality. You get a lot of storage options. There is one which is right below the control knobs, and then you have a couple of cup holders. There is a little bit of storage over here, a tray, and then you have a couple of cup holders in the back of the center console as well. So to round things up, it's a funky car that has a great design going for it. It has a fantastic interior personality as well. And just ignore a few things, and this thing is definitely going to give you a sense of satisfaction, and also it is a very, very strong contender in its category.